A stunning secret uncovered inside Clarence House has shaken the entire royal family to its core during what seemed like simple routine renovations. Construction workers suddenly stumbled upon a bricked-up space directly behind Queen Camilla's bedroom wall, revealing an unexpected find that sent shockwaves straight through the palace. Filled with bizarre objects and highly personal secrets, this sudden discovery raises deeply uncomfortable questions about Camilla's mysterious background and her true position in the monarchy. Why did someone keep this hidden for so many decades, and what does it mean for the royals today? A simple safety check just turned terrifying. It was supposed to be a completely standard procedure, just a quiet, ordinary maintenance check that almost never gets any public attention. Specialized internal security crews had been carrying out basic structural reviews inside different royal residences, making sure the oldest wings of Buckingham Palace were completely safe, quietly maintained, and entirely free of hidden dangers. Normally this work happened quietly, with technicians measuring tiny wall cracks, inspectors looking out for water damage, and electricians testing hidden wiring, hardly the sort of project that causes gossip throughout those grand hallways. But on this particular afternoon, right inside Queen Camilla's private suite at Buckingham Palace, one of the most famous landmarks on Earth, something deeply unsettling began to unfold. Her private room, elegant yet tightly guarded against any nosy outsiders, was scheduled for a routine safety review under the cover of wall reinforcement. Historic plaster walls, classic mouldings, and thick, heavy curtains made her bedroom not just majestic, but incredibly tough to properly analyze. Yet, as the security crew started, they spotted something odd near an interior wall. A tiny irregularity, almost impossible for an untrained eye to notice, ran down a section hidden behind a heavy wall, hanging. The seams simply did not match the rest of the wall's design. At first they shrugged it off as simple shifting the natural settling that always happens in ancient historic structures. No other landmark on Earth acts simultaneously as a private family home and the official state office, but when special gear was set against the surface, the feedback came back completely wrong. That wall was not solid plaster after all. Behind the decorative wooden panelling there appeared to be a hollow space much deeper than any architectural blueprints ever showed. Official rules demanded that any anomaly be reported right away, so top-level palace security was quickly called in. A sudden silence filled the space. This was clearly no ordinary finding. This was something hidden away entirely on purpose. The team moved with absolute caution, knowing these grand royal halls also house thousands of priceless ancient historic treasures. Gently pulling the heavy wall hanging away, they began tracing the light outline of an ancient sealed-up entryway. Heavy dust had gathered around the cracks, showing that nobody had touched it in decades. At this point, even the most experienced security officers felt a distinct shift in the room. The safety check, planned for under an hour, dragged on as nervous rumours began to spread. A tiny crack in the plaster had transformed into a door of massive questions. What sat inside? Who sealed it up? And why was there no documentation? A decision was made instantly. They decided to break open the wall, and as the heavy tools were brought forward, everyone in the room realized this was absolutely not a routine check anymore. It was the start of a process that might break down much more than historic stone. One massive question remained: was this hidden barrier keeping a safe secret or hiding a giant scandal? Don't go anywhere, because the truth is finally coming out. A secret doorway appears as the soft tapping of tools against the wall echoes oddly in Camilla's suite. Each scraping sound and careful cut made it obvious that the team was dealing with something far beyond a standard bedroom partition. Piece by piece, the historic plaster fell away, exposing not merely a hollow pocket, but an intentionally designed chamber. Underneath the old plaster and wooden mouldings lay a completely hidden hatch, its corners sharp and frame heavily reinforced, showing that its builder wanted it hidden for centuries. This unexpected sight instantly changed the energy inside the room. What was supposed to be a boring structural inspection suddenly felt like the starting pages of a suspense novel playing out right before their eyes. Palace security officers gave permission to carefully remove the panel, each slow step taken with total precision. Eventually, with a heavy, rusty creak, the hidden hatch broke loose, releasing a blast of stale, thick air that smelled incredibly old. It felt like the breath of a dark void untouched by sunlight for many decades. Shining a light past the opening, their beam hit a truly strange sight, a giant historical map showing 4 main continents, with Great Britain drawn much larger than actual scale. A tight stone hallway completely covered in thick layers of dust and spiderwebs. It smelled of heavy mildew, and the silence hung so thick that the workers paused before stepping in. The space was narrower than a grown man's shoulders, forcing everyone to shuffle ahead carefully, almost sideways. The stonework itself appeared quite ancient, likely dating back to historic renovations completely missing from modern palace records. People often whispered that many royal estates contained hidden rooms and secret passages, ancient relics from times when monarchs required rapid escape routes or totally private rooms far away from servants. But this felt completely different. The layout looked less like an escape route and more like a vault, purposefully locked and purposefully forgotten. Palace blueprints confirmed the mystery, making no mention of a hollow corridor inside that part of the building. There was no record of extra chambers leading off Camilla's bedroom, even though down in the King's Gallery an old map hangs above the fireplace. Whoever built the space kept it hidden by leaving it entirely off official records. Taking slow, careful steps, the security team moved forward. Thick dust drifted down from above with every single step, and the quiet shuffling of unseen bugs made the quiet hallway feel incredibly eerie. The further they went, the clearer it became. This was no simple architectural accident. The walkway had been intentionally bricked shut, but something was waiting for them at the very end. This hallway finished in a tiny alcove featuring much darker, heavily weathered stonework. Right there, barely lit by the shaking beams of their flashlights, sat a massive weathered chest, locked tight and looking creepily out of place. It appeared as though someone put it there purposefully, then simply left it to rot. The workers silently exchanged tense looks. What began as a routine wall repair in a royal suite had guided them to an ancient hidden room, and as they got ready to open the box, one reality became obvious. Somebody had gone through extreme trouble to make sure nobody would ever find this. Now the heavy wooden box sat quietly in the dark shadows at the deep end of the hidden passage, covered in thick dust, as if time itself wanted to hide it forever. The bright beam of a flashlight swept across the surface, exposing an old chest that looked incredibly out of place in this tight, suffocating passage. Heavy, rectangular, and reinforced with dark iron bands, it seemed centuries older than the secret room behind it. Its hinges were rusted and the wood warped with age. Still, that heavy lock remained stubbornly intact, as if it had been sealed with real intent, not just abandoned there. The royal inspectors hesitated, unsure if they should proceed. Finding an undocumented chamber was shocking enough, but stumbling upon an object so intentionally hidden raised the stakes entirely. Strict protocol meant palace security had to take over immediately. Within minutes, senior officers marched in their footsteps, echoing heavily down the dark, secret corridor. They ordered every single detail to be fully documented. They took photos of the chest, measured the alcove, noting it was an absolute work of art. But what really stunned them was the strange metal dial and its complex mechanism, making sure they recorded everything before touching even a single latch. Even then, the air in the room grew heavier by the second. The team simply could not shake the feeling that this was no ordinary forgotten storage box. There was an undeniable intention to how it was placed, sitting right in the centre of the alcove, facing forward, as if waiting to be found. No tracks in the dust led anywhere near it, proving nobody had laid hands on it in decades. The rusted lock still looked incredibly tough. Early attempts to pry it open with normal tools failed, as if the chest itself resisted. One officer wanted to haul it back to a secure room for careful testing, but others insisted they open it right here before word leaked out to anyone else. That heated debate alone showed just how explosive this discovery really was. This was no ordinary piece of royal history, unlike other family relics that stayed quiet, private, and deeply hidden. This was buried on purpose. Ultimately, they made the call to move forward carefully but directly. Heavy crowbars and tactical gear were carried down their loud clangs against the iron bands echoing through the tight space. Every single blow felt louder than the last, sending shivers through the entire team. At last, after what felt like ages, the heavy lock gave way with a sharp snap. For a long moment, nobody moved. The trunk lay fully exposed, its deep secrets just inches from the light. Flash beams hovered, waiting for someone to raise the lid. The lead officer nodded, and slowly, with a loud, rusty groan from the ancient hinges, the heavy lid was raised. But what lay inside was not piles of shiny gold royal jewels or dusty old palace records. Instead, their first look revealed thick layers of old parchment letters tied up with neat ribbons and faded leather books. The entire room went dead silent. Whatever they found, this was no minor discovery. The royal past had been locked away on purpose, and now it demanded to be heard. But what if these delicate papers were more than just old memories, but proof of massive royal secrets? Stay tuned. The shocking revelations are only starting with contents that defy all expectations. As the heavy lid finally creaked open, everyone leaned in, preparing themselves for nothing more than boring old royal inventories, dusty financial logs, or perhaps just a few pieces of forgotten personal trash. But what they actually saw took their breath away. In that tight space, inside under a light coating of dust, sat neat stacks of personal letters tied up with faded ribbons alongside piles of parchment, yellowed by time, and multiple leather diaries that carried the undeniable weight of heavy secrets. This was definitely not the usual junk you would expect to find hidden inside a royal palace. These papers were deeply personal, curated, and neatly arranged as if someone had saved them with great care. Every bundle looked fragile, the paper so thin it might turn to dust if touched. A faint smell of old ink and dry paper floated up from the deep chest, bringing with it a chilling, almost ghostly sense of history. Just past the grand staircase, you enter the main staterooms. It felt exactly like stepping uninvited straight into someone's private diary. The team hesitated, fully aware that this shocking discovery was way bigger than their simple assignment. Yet palace security demanded that everything be handled with absolute care. White gloves went on, photos were taken, and each item was logged. Carefully, they lifted the first batch of letters, exposing elegant handwriting on envelopes that had never been mailed out. The ink was light, but readable, the letters written with great care and personality. When they gently opened one of the diaries, the distinctive handwriting inside was instantly familiar to anyone who knew royal family history. These were no random notes or boring household lists. These raw words belonged to a figure whose iconic voice had once captured the entire world. While they avoided reading too deeply just yet, the names, dates, and emotional phrasing dropped massive hints. These personal papers were definitely not official records. These were private thoughts, secrets never meant for public eyes. But what made this whole discovery even more mind-boggling was exactly where they found it. Normally, precious papers like these would be safely catalogued in royal archives, where official historians could keep them secure and well preserved. Instead, they were locked away behind a bedroom wall in a hidden tunnel nobody knew about. Outside, large windows usually allowed subjects a quick glimpse of the monarch. Such a calculated cover-up suggested real intent, hinting at deep secrets far beyond some simple mistake. The private diaries came in all sizes. Some were small pocketbooks with heavily worn covers, showing they were handled constantly. Others were much heavier bound in dark, rich leather with gold-trimmed corners, the kind of luxury built to last forever. Inside the chest, loose pages were stuffed between the books, as if tucked away in a huge hurry. They also found open envelopes containing letters written without any formal titles, sounding exactly as though the author never actually planned on mailing them to anyone. With every single layer they uncovered more shocking questions emerged. Who hid them here? Why did they hide them like this? And what was the biggest mystery of all? What dark truths were hidden inside these pages? The team realized instantly that this was no simple stack of old papers, but of silenced voices and untold royal stories. This trunk did not hold gold or relics, but something far more powerful, real testimony. Princess Diana's long-lost, unheard voice. The exact second those first few pages were read in total silence, the whole energy inside that cold, hidden stone passage completely and utterly shifted. What started as a routine building checkup had slowly turned into something deeply sacred. That elegant, sweeping handwriting left absolutely no room for doubt. It belonged to Princess Diana. The elegant loops of her letters and those familiar ink flourishes perfectly matched the public notes the world had already seen from her. But these secret pages felt entirely different. They were raw, completely unguarded, and scribbled in hidden places where she obviously believed no one would ever look. At first glance, the lines read like private diary entries filled with short sentences, broken thoughts and moments of pure honesty. But as I read on, I began to realize exactly what was going on inside her troubled mind back then. These pages held far more than simple musings. They contained painful confessions of loneliness, silent terrors, and the constant feeling of being completely overshadowed. Diana's writing had absolutely no performative intent. These notes were never meant for interviews, public sympathy, or crafting her royal legacy. They were thoughts written strictly for herself, aching with a heavy, painful truth. One passage penned in fading blue ink said, "In reality, she was constantly attacked by the press and silenced by a cold royal family. They smile at her today the exact way I always hoped they would smile at me. It feels as if my absence has made it easy to love me, but that never happened while I was actually here." Even without names, the target of her words was completely obvious. Camilla's shadow seemed to hover over almost every single page, not as an outright accusation, but as a painful reminder of a scar that never healed. And then another entry took an even darker turn. While serving as an ambassador for the society, she travelled to Lisbon for the World Congress on osteoporosis. Sometimes I really wonder if my voice will only carry weight once I am gone. Maybe then they will finally stop painting me as someone I never actually was. It was a chilling thought, not because she predicted the future, but because it showed her deep fear of being completely erased and rewritten just to make other people feel comfortable. What shocked the research team the most was how incredibly consistent these entries were written across several journals over many months and possibly years. Diana came back repeatedly to themes of being unseen, deeply isolated, and holding on to a fragile hope that her truth would one day finally surface. You won't find bitterness in her writing, just a quiet resignation, as if she had already accepted how the history books would eventually paint her. Scattered among these deep thoughts were unsent letters, stampless and folded tight, tucked away into the journals, as if she wanted to hide them from her own eyes. They were addressed to nameless recipients, although the clues pointed directly to close family trusted friends, and maybe even her young sons before they were old enough to comprehend it all. The palace guards, trained to stay completely detached, were visibly shaken. They realized they weren't just holding old sheets of paper. It was obvious that Diana had left behind far more than just personal reflections. She left behind pieces of a legacy that someone had worked incredibly hard to hide away. And now those secrets had literally and figuratively broken through the palace walls, demanding to be heard by the world. Could these newly found secrets finally force the royal family to face the truths they wanted buried forever? Keep watching. The chaos was only just starting. Pure panic hit the royals. As soon as that chest was pulled from the secret passage, the mood inside Buckingham Palace instantly flipped from curiosity to a major crisis. A routine building inspection had unexpectedly uncovered highly sensitive royal documents, and the shocking fallout was simply too massive for anyone in the palace to ignore. Within hours, the discovery was quietly moved under a secure guard to a highly protected archive room. But quiet rumours about the shock discovery spread much faster than palace officials could manage, leaving senior advisors completely scrambling behind closed doors. The royal family had spent decades mastering the art of crisis control, relying on calculated statements, deliberate silence, and clever media distractions. This wasn't just another cheap headline about temporary royal drama or fleeting scandals. These were Diana's own words, raw, private, and now undeniably authentic. Worse still, they were found buried deep inside Camilla's bedroom wall. The terrible optics alone threatened to shatter decades of carefully rebuilt trust. Emergency meetings were called one after another. Royal advisors, top lawyers, and senior aides argued in hushed but highly intense tones. Some pushed to reveal the letters, immediately warning that hiding them would only fuel suspicion if things leaked out. Others demanded total silence, arguing that admitting anything would trigger endless media speculation and reopen old wounds the royals had spent decades trying to heal. King Charles, sources say, was under immense and visible strain. For Charles, the shocking discovery hit on a deeply personal and political level. This wasn't just ancient history. It was about his current wife, his late ex-wife, and the very delicate balance of loyalty inside the modern monarchy. His immediate concern was reportedly his sons. How on earth would Prince William and Prince Harry react? How could they possibly explain this massive discovery to them, much less to the general public? The security officers who found the chest were instantly forced to sign strict secrecy agreements. Their roles were completely wiped from official records within days. Still, silence was impossible to enforce because too many palace staff had witnessed the entire operation. And even among staff bound by loyalty, quiet whispers started echoing through the palace hallways, asking one single burning question over and over. Who had hidden Princess Diana's writings inside Camilla's private bedroom suite, and why on earth were they stashed away instead of being archived? This massive uncertainty quickly triggered a wild storm of speculation. Several palace sources suspected the chest was moved during the chaotic aftermath of Diana's tragic passing, accidentally misplaced, and then quietly hidden away without any explanation. Others whispered it was a deliberate plot, a choice designed to keep her personal writings far away from the public and even away from her sons. The Royal Press Office, usually incredibly fast at putting out clarifying remarks, remained completely silent. There was no confirmation, no denial, not even a calculated deflection. That total silence spoke absolute volumes. This complete loss of control and lack of any official narrative created a massive media vacuum that the public was incredibly eager to fill. What originally started as a dusty chest behind a wall had now evolved into something much greater. It was an ultimate test of transparency, loyalty, and the monarchy's ability to survive truths they desperately hoped would stay buried forever. For the palace, the panic wasn't about what was found. It was about how they play their part in making their children feel valued. It was about what might happen if the public uncovered everything Princess Diana had left behind. Was this silence a shield to protect the monarchy, or a warning that Diana's truth could shatter the crown? Stick around. The royal brothers' awakening says it all. This is William and Harry's painful realization. When the shocking news of this discovery finally reached Diana's sons, it did not arrive through normal palace channels or official briefings. Instead, pieces of information slowly trickled into their lives. A frantic message here, a hushed explanation there, until the grim reality became completely undeniable. Their mother's deeply personal diaries, hidden away for decades, had been found sealed inside a wall in Camilla's private bedroom. For Prince William, this shocking discovery was incredibly unsettling. It felt deeply personal to him. Diana's legacy was not just some inheritance. It was the very foundation of his entire public role. Every step toward the throne carried her immense shadow, and now her long-lost voice had resurfaced, honouring her memory while brutally reopening painful wounds he had spent decades trying to stitch closed. Those journals were not ancient history. They were physical pieces of his late mother preserved and then deliberately concealed. The thought that they were hidden in Camilla's private living quarters felt like a direct insult to her legacy. Prince Harry's reaction while sharing that same grief took on a much sharper edge. His distance from the royal institution already gave him the freedom to speak out completely. And this discovery only reinforced his firm belief that too much of his mother's life story had been heavily controlled, edited, or silenced. According to close royal sources, Harry demanded immediate transparency, insisting that Diana's personal writings belonged first and foremost to her family, not locked inside palace vaults or debated by secret committees. The contrast between the brothers was striking, yet their pain was deeply shared. William leaned heavily toward a path of measured caution, terrified of exposing his mother's private words to a storm of public scrutiny before he could understand them. Harry, on the other hand, saw absolutely no reason for delay, nor any justification for secrecy, when their mother's voice had already been stolen from them once before. Behind closed palace doors, their conversations were reported to be raw, deeply emotional, and at times highly fractious. Old tensions quickly resurfaced, mirroring the same divisions that had grown over recent years. But beneath it all lay a truth neither brother could escape. Diana's presence had suddenly returned, demanding to be acknowledged, and both sons felt the heavy pull of responsibility. The palace had desperately hoped to manage this fallout quietly, but the involvement of William and Harry made that impossible. This was no longer just about standard security protocols or a royal image. It was about a mother's voice finally unearthed from decades of silence, and two sons completely unwilling to let it be buried again. For William and Harry, this awakening was painful, but it was also a deep reminder. Their mother's truth had survived hidden in shadows, and now it had found them. Cue Camilla's intense silence and fury. When this discovery was finally brought to Camilla's attention, her reaction was incredibly swift, sharp, and layered with absolute disbelief. Those present during the briefing recalled her expression shifting rapidly from confusion to raw fury in a matter of moments. She demanded to know exactly who had authorized the search, why her private suite had been entered so thoroughly, and most importantly, how something so deeply sensitive had been hidden there completely without her knowledge. Her aides desperately attempted to reassure her, framing the inspection as routine and unavoidable, but their words barely registered with her. Camilla was reportedly absolutely livid, not only at the massive intrusion, but at the terrifying implication. To have Princess Diana's most personal writings unearthed within her own private chambers carried a massive symbolic weight she simply could not ignore. It felt as if history itself had crept into her bedroom, refusing to let her escape the shadow she had lived under for decades. Outwardly, Camilla chose absolute silence. No official public statement, no comment, not even a tiny hint of acknowledgement passed her lips. Behind closed palace walls, however, her fury was absolutely palpable. She accused her staff of sheer incompetence, even betrayal, suggesting someone had deliberately orchestrated this entire ordeal just to humiliate her. The terrifying idea that Diana's voice could suddenly rise again from deep within her private space was far more than inconvenient. It was a humiliation that threatened to completely undo years of careful image building. Her relationship with King Charles reportedly strained under the heavy weight of this discovery. While King Charles urged restraint, preferring to manage this fallout through a quiet strategy, Camilla's primary instinct was defensive and even combative. She wanted clear answers, but she also wanted control that seemed to slip further away with every single whisper about what had been found. Royal advisers debated whether Camilla should confront this issue publicly, but she steadfastly refused. Any denial, she argued, would only inflame wild speculation. Yet her silence bred its own kind of suspicion. To the watching public, her refusal to speak appeared like evasion. To palace insiders, it looked like pure fear. What angered her most, according to those close to the Queen Consort, was not the discovery itself, but the dangerous narrative it threatened to ignite. That even during her own reign, Diana's presence remained unshakable. The past had once again broken completely through, and this time it had done so right within the walls she considered her personal sanctuary. And like each one of you, she loved to write. For a whole decade she wrote beautiful poems. Camilla's silence was definitely not strength. It was the sound of someone cornered by ghosts she could never fully escape. A royal legacy that refuses to stay buried. The shocking discovery did far more than expose forgotten journals. It tore violently through decades of silence. Diana's voice, once thought to be confined to memory and carefully edited archives, resurfaced in her own handwriting, completely unfiltered and impossible to soften. Every single word carried immense weight, every line a reminder that her story was not finished, no matter how hard the palace tried to control it. This was not the iconic Diana immortalized in glossy photographs or polished royal documentaries. These were not rehearsed interviews or second-hand gossip accounts. What emerged from deep behind Camilla's bedroom wall were her most private reflections, honest, raw, and painfully intimate. They spoke of invisibility, of painful longing of a woman whose public smile often masked quiet despair. And now, decades later, those thoughts rang louder than any carefully crafted statement the palace could ever issue. For Prince William and Prince Harry, these writings felt like lost fragments of their mother finally returned. They revealed sides of her the brothers had not fully known. Moments of reflection she had chosen never to share, including her beloved Welsh mountain pony. And she remembered a massive horseshoe next door called the Ditching Horseshoe. To the brothers, this newly found legacy was both a gift and a deep wound. It was a shocking connection wrapped in the agony of a deep royal secret. Why hide these diary pages, and why, here for Camilla, the fallout was absolutely crushing. It was not just that Diana's private journals had been found, it was where they were hidden. Tucked right behind her bedroom wall, the message was impossible to ignore. Even without hard proof of how those papers got there, this discovery framed her as the one guarding another woman's long-silenced truth. Inside Buckingham Palace, simple anxiety turned into a brutal reckoning. Courtiers panicked and advisers argued, but this harsh reality was unavoidable. Diana's voice had finally escaped the dark shadows. The royal family, built on strict order and control, now faced a massive force they could not contain. Some legacies are simply too powerful to bury. Diana's legacy was one of those forces, and through these words dragged from the darkness of that sealed wall, her presence returned. Not as a faint memory, but as a voice impossible to erase. So what do you think this shocking discovery means for Camilla and the royal family's fragile balance? Can Diana's voice ever truly be silenced again? We would love to hear your thoughts. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe.